Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. I'm excited to dive into more Q&A questions from you. And today we have a bit more of a focus on like family dynamics, ancestral connections, and even a little bit of like starseed connections. So it's kind of, we're keeping it within the family today, all based on spirit's understandings and what they've brought through for me. So I'm excited to dive into these, and I invite you to just listen with an open mind and take what resonates. And if something doesn't resonate, you just leave it and carry on your way, right? You take what resonates from all the things that you hear from all different sources, and you leave what doesn't, right? So I invite you to do the same thing with this stuff, okay? All right, so I'm going to dive right in. So the first question is, I have siblings that are very conservative in politics and their religious views. We are family, yet when I share that I have a prayer request, I often wonder if their energy affects the results of what I'm asking for. I've done this for my husband's health issues mostly, but now I'm wondering if I should not ask them to pray. So this is a really valid question, right? Where when we're asking people to pray, sorry, or to add energy to things, we're asking that in the hopes that they bring their highest energy forward in that request, right? Like a purest type of request for energy. Now, regardless of politics or religious views, I think when we're asking people that we care about, if they can help with whether it's called a prayer, whether it's called sending healing, whether it's called sending energy or sending well wishes, it's all coming back to sending an intent, right? That's what it's really coming back to. And so I think if we feel that the energy that those people would add with their intent is valuable, then it's worth the ask. And it doesn't necessarily matter how it is done, right? Whether someone sits and prays as the response, whether somebody writes in a journal that they hope for healing for such and such person, or they just take a moment to pause and just say, like, I really hope that this person does well. All of that is sending the desired energy to that person, right? So I think you can definitely ask your family and release the way in which it has to come about, right? It can follow many different pathways. Now, the one caveat though is if somebody would have like a malicious intent, which I'm highly doubting most people in the family would have any malicious intent, but if someone has a malicious intent, then we don't want to invite them into that healing energy because we want to keep that healing energy high vibe, right? And then lastly, too, when we give a request for healing energy and prayers, it's up to the individual to choose whether or not they want to share in that request or not, right? So really, our control only lasts up to the point of the request, and that's it. After that point, what happens with that is out of our control, and so we can really release it because you putting out the energy to your community, your family for healing, it's also going out into the collective, right? It's also going out to the beings, the religious figures, the ascended masters, the spirit guides that you pray to as well, right? So the biggest thing is what you do with it and then releasing once it's beyond your reach. So I hope that helps make sense. Great question. Okay, here's another one. Okay, I wonder what your spirit guide has to say about nuclear families. We've talked about divine unions not long ago, some romantic, some not. And with so many families breaking apart, I'm wondering what the purpose of nuclear families is. Is it part of our blueprint to break the family apart, or are we supposed to work things out? And if we don't, does it mean that we've failed and we must take a new path? So this is a really valid question. And we are seeing a lot of family dynamics break apart. It is connected into the astrology this fall, as well as the numerology of this 9 year and the Chinese astrology of the snake year. It's a lot of releases and a lot of karmic completions, closures, and with that comes big decisions where people are choosing to honor their path. And so there is a lot of shifting in family dynamics right now. And that's not said lightly, like, it's just in the astrology, no big deal. It is a big deal and it does have a big impact. Here's the important thing to remember. So, when we come together with somebody, if we come back to a union with somebody, when we come together with somebody, we're drawn to that person for a reason. There's something in their energy, in their experiences that is going to bring forward a piece of growth in you. And sometimes that's lifelong, and sometimes it's for a season, right? Or a time. One thing that's really been stressed to me over and over by my guides, though, is just because we've made a decision, say in our 20s, to marry a certain person. And by the time we're in our 50s, there's this pressure that because we decided that when we're 20, we have to stay with it because that's what we decided then. The thing is when you marry somebody at your 20s or you commit to somebody, you're not just committing to the person they are in that moment. You're committing to walking the path with them as they renew themselves over and over and over. And what happens is sometimes in relationships, one person renews and blossoms over and over, and the other person doesn't. And if the two people can't continuously come back into a loving union together with the continual new versions of themselves as they grow and heal through their lives, people can start to separate their energies. Their paths start to veer away from each other rather than coming back together. So from an energetic standpoint, that's just energy not matching anymore. And that's based on choices. And that's okay. There's a lot tied up in religions and such about committing to somebody and having to stay with them. That is a very helpful thing for especially young families, right? Like it's a lot easier having two parents parenting for the most part, again, general. So there's a lot to be thought about with that. However, if the energies together are so disharmonic that it's creating health issues and energetic issues and traumas and whatever, it's not worth it to stay together. Energetically, you're trying to force two opposing magnets to be together. And so, what I've come across with spirit over and over with these types of questions is that what we really need to do is embrace the life journey and the flow in the life journey. Are both partners in that nuclear family willing to continue to come back together and grow together and embrace each other's differences as they need to expand, but continue to expand as well beside them? If not, then that's usually the end of a journey. And so some people's journeys aren't meant to be lifelong, even though it was desired in the beginning to have a lifelong union. It's not meant to be lifelong. It's meant to be a part of the journey, a stepping stone, an impactful piece. But what can happen is once that initial union has gone its separate ways, it opens up to the next divine pairing or partner that is in alignment with your soul journey. And some of those secondary partners are the divine union that maybe your soul has always been yearning for. Sometimes not. That's the thing. It's never black and white. So it is a part of our blueprint to connect with certain people or certain types of people that can bring about certain experiences on our journey. How long we choose to be connected into those people becomes a free will piece. And what I learned from this really wonderful healer one time that I met in Egypt, he talked about unions with people, and he talked about this quick nature that society has right now to split up really quickly, right? And how that is the opposite of how the generations before had the idea of you must stay together, right? So we had the must stay together and then the quick to separate. And he said what the soul really needs in the journey is to exhaust all options with that individual, try all of the things so that if there comes a point in which the two of you are going to break apart, you know in your soul that you have done all of the things possible so that your separation comes with full closure. And that's when you can have two people that can fully move forward without a lot of sort of baggage and trauma. Because usually when we jump ship and there's a bunch of trauma, then we carry that into the next relationship. Again, I want to say there's definitely times where there's certain dangers in relationships where someone needs to jump ship quickly, right? So again, it's not a black and white answer. That's why I'm trying to lay out all of these things because it's about what resonates with you in your journey at the divine time. And so I personally don't think that when things don't work out as we tend to say that it's a failure. I don't think that's it at all. I think it's more energetically based. And it's about what we do at that point in which it breaks apart. Do we heal and grow within ourselves? Or do we try to just find a band-aid within another relationship that will often be the same type, right? Then you know there's no growth. You're repeating cycles. But if you come to that closure and that ending with knowing you've done everything possible, then that is a completion. And that's not a failure at all. That's a win, right? So there's lots to ponder in that. But I hope that helps explain it. I think that's a really wonderful question. All right. The next question is this is about child loss. So this might be triggering for some people. And if that is, then you may want to fast forward a little bit here. So this question is, I know people that have lost children seemingly before their time. Why do some souls choose to incarnate for such a short time? And what lessons do those usually mean for the families still here? So child loss is probably one of the hardest experiences for people to confront. And it's probably one of the hardest types of readings to do is child loss, because it's so hard for us to understand the why from the human perspective. Why would this happen? And so I really want to say that, first of all, I want to speak very delicately about this because it is so deep. We never feel that a parent should go before, or sorry, a child should go before a parent, ever. I don't think that's ever going to feel right. Now, what I do know from having spoken to many different children that have passed at various stages, some within hours of their birth, some in miscarriages, some a couple years old, some in their teens, even up to like early 20s, is there's a common theme that I see, which is that their life path wasn't meant to be a long one. And oftentimes, their journey from the soul perspective was to come in to harness a certain experience that would help their soul grow and would also have a lasting impact on the family. When we think about that from the human perspective, it just sounds awful, right? Why? Why would you want it? Why would you want that? Why would you put that in your blueprint? Sometimes what happens is it can be karmic connections where there was a soul agreement between the two of them that, one soul would come in for a certain amount of time to balance out a karma. Oftentimes, the soul itself only needed to come in for a short time during the years that were very innocent to experience and absorb so much of the innocence from their perspective, that child perspective, before they would get caught up in the forgetting and the adult nature of our minds, which is a lot more closed off. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes the child's energy comes in order to give the family an opportunity to learn forgiveness or to go through the deep experience of grief. And I have to say, it's not always just as simple as that. But again, I'm just giving reasons I have been shown from spirit as to why that happens. There are some times too where the body of the child had some sort of either genetic issue or a malfunction of the body. And so the soul didn't mean to leave, but the body had a malfunction. It couldn't fix itself. It couldn't repair. And so sometimes if that happens, especially if that's in a miscarriage or if the baby's born and it passes away more suddenly, sometimes there's a malfunction in the body, and oftentimes that soul will come back around again, and the mother will tend to get pregnant pretty quickly again, or within like a year or so, and that soul will come around again in a different body. That's less likely the older the child gets, though. It is I think death, no matter what, and the loss of it, I think is 9.9 times out of 10 harder for the families than the person that crosses over. When I talk to spirits that cross over, 9.9 times out of 10, they are in peace, they have the understanding and all of this, but it's for those that are left behind that have the loss of the person. Like I always think it's beautiful in French. You don't say I miss you, you say tu me manques, right? You're missing from me. And I think that is the thing that we really feel when we lose somebody, especially children, they're missing from us because they're such a deep part of our creation. And so it's very, very hard. And so I find like no matter what example we're given as to why child loss happens, I think from the human perspective, it's just hard no matter what. Now, what I will say though is that when children cross over, they tend to cross with the absolute most ease and grace because they have most recently been on the other side. And so it's just this seamless journey across, and they are renewed and they are light and they are peaceful. And they always say that they don't want to see their mom and dad so sad because they're gone. And they always say, I'm right with them. I'm bringing them signs. I'm bringing them understandings. I'm meeting them in their dreams. I'm okay. I don't want to see them suffer so bad for me because I'm okay. And I think as we begin to open up our capacity for multidimensional awareness and come more deeply into our gifts, open our minds, open our beliefs, their ability to connect with us becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And the last thing I want to say too is another very common thing that I see is that when the child has passed, they often will stay around as a spirit guide for the remainder of their family's life, to be near them and bring guidance, and then also be the first one to welcome them when they cross over. So, very deep question, very beautiful question, and a very tough question all at the same time. All right, next one. Okay, I would love to know about how our ancestors are connected to our spiritual path. Are they always part of your spirit team? What if you have a dark family history, for example? Also, I'm curious to get more information about the spiritual connection we have with pets and animals. I recently lost my beloved dog and truly think we bonded on a soul level. I think people really disregard how wonderful animals are in a family. Okay, so for the first part of this question, how are ancestors connected to our path? Are they always part of your spirit team? And what if they have a dark family history? So, really interesting. Okay, so the energetics, the spiritual energy of our ancestors, they are energetically connected to our path. So we can connect into our ancestry. We can connect into their higher selves. We can connect into different aspects of them because they are connected in. And usually what happens is it's like several generations will. So if you take a family unit, right? And let's just say there's 100 souls in that family unit that are going to come in over a span of, say, a century, right? So what happens is over that century, all the people are going to come in, and then there are going to be those that are going to begin to exit that came in first. So what happens is that family unit, that ancestral unit of about 100 souls, will usually all come in and then all exit in their time within that span of like 100 to 200 years before anybody else starts to come back around again. So what that means is our ancestors dating back several generations, and I'm just using 100 years as an example, but they will be on the other side as our spirit team available for spirit guidance. Okay, because we tend to stay with these family units that can shift and change, but they are a part of that. Now, if you have a dark family history, for example, what's really interesting is when the souls cross over, they have to go through like a healing process. They have to return to their higher frequency light. They have to understand their soul journey. There's a lot that they do if there's been a lot of darkness, a lot of forgiveness, and a lot of things like that. Now, they won't come back around on average. They won't come back around in order to bring guidance and such until they have released the energetics of that life and come back into light. And I've seen this before with different people. I've seen it in some readings where a spirit came through to talk to somebody that I was reading for, and right away they were upfront about the harm they caused their family. And they had healed that. They had made amends with that on the other side with their own karma, meeting their own soul face to face. But they needed to come through to the family to express everything that they understood. And to me, that shows a lot of healing. Doesn't make it okay, but it shows a lot of healing. So if a soul has done a lot of that healing and they come back into their light, they can come through as guidance. But if they are still in a distorted energy, they will usually be sort of kept in this energy, this dimension, this space where they need to heal until they can release that and return to a love frequency. And the thing that's interesting is frequency doesn't lie. So you can't like pretend you're in a love frequency and then come back. It You can't release that until you've shifted your frequency. So it's quite interesting. So in that sense, if you're really channeling your ancestors, you would be channeling the ones that are able to bring through energy and support you. If there's any dark attachments from that, sometimes there can be some souls that don't fully cross over and they're staying rather earthbound. And sometimes that can feel like darkness, right? Or hauntings and such. And in that case, it's good to do a lot of clearing energy, even seeing like a shaman, someone that can clear energies like that or walk through realms. But the other interesting thing that's unique about the ancestry and our spiritual path is sometimes we might be a soul that is very separate from that soul-based ancestry, but we come into this body that has remnants and echoes of the biological ancestry. So sometimes people are dealing with issues in their physical body or even fears or phobias that come up that are more related to the body's genetic code passed down from, say, your family lived through famine and war and trauma, right? And maybe there's a lot of darkness in that too. Energetically, you will have some resonance of that through your cellular structure within your DNA. So then there's some healing to do within your physical body to heal some of that, even though maybe your soul energy doesn't feel connected, right? So sometimes we are connected to our ancestry by soul lineage and biological lineage, but sometimes it's not the soul lineage and it's just the biology. So it's really interesting. And so if that's happening, sometimes spiritual hypnosis or Akashic record readings can be really helpful. Going into past lives and learning kind of what's what can help differentiate that. Okay, and then the question about the spiritual connection with pets and animals, I absolutely agree that animals are so deeply connected to us. And oftentimes, animals will come in as a guide, as even sometimes maybe a family member, as they have like deep, deep ties to us. There are some animals that come in and they're just simply an animal companion. There's not a lot of deep consciousness in them, but more often than not, there's a lot of consciousness. And I can say from my experience, actually, my dog is a spirit guide that decided to come in as a dog. And when spirit first told me that another being was coming in, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get pregnant. I'm like, I don't want to be pregnant. My kids are already starting to grow up. And they said, no, it's going to come in on four legs. And I was like, what? They're like, no, she's coming in as a dog. And I was like, at the time, I'd never had a dog before. I just had cats. And I was like, I don't know how to take care of a dog. I can do kids and cats, but I don't know how to take care of a dog. And where do I find a dog? And how do I find this? And the spirit was like, we will lead it all. You just need to follow the signs. And that's exactly what happened. And when she came in and when she was born, she came in to me at spirit and she said, I made it here. I'm Earthside. And sure enough, I checked my phone and I'd got a call or I'd got a picture sent that all the puppies were born. And her best way to come and support our family was to come in as a dog, the most innocent energy, the most pure love energy. And then another story is one of my spirit guides that I have been working with in this lifetime recently has come in as a fragment of her has come in one of my new kittens to bring healing frequencies. So, I mean, our pets are deeply connected to us. Sometimes they are there as a companion. Sometimes they are there as specific spirit guided work. Sometimes they're there for healing energy, but they really are there for this next level, unconditional love. And what's interesting is, I mean, the crossover between, say, dogs and cats, and it's not limited to dogs and cats, but the crossover happens. But sometimes we can see cats coming in more as holding a role of keeping the energetics in your space clear and sacred. They have a beautiful frequency that kind of like neutralizes pesky energy. Dogs tend to come in to show unconditional love, that like steady companionship. Again, they're not limited to only those things. It can totally cross over to the way cats are, clearing space, protection, all of these things. But animals have a completely natural and pure way of love that humans struggle to have, human to human, because it requires vulnerability. Whereas animals, they show how they are. They just are. And that's something that's so pure. So I definitely agree um, that you can definitely be soul bonded with your pets. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Next question is, um, okay, how do you know if you are a star seed? How might one being, or how might being one change your experience here on Earth? So just like we were talking about soul lineages before, and like some being from different soul lineages, sometimes your soul, whether you're an individual in your family or your entire family, is soul lineage of a star being. What that tends to mean is you've had more lifetimes off Earth than you have had on Earth. And so, what that could mean for you is sometimes you could feel like Earth feels foreign. The density of the planet feels extremely dense to you because your soul is normally used to a higher vibrational body, higher density way of being. The social and societal constructs in our planet can feel very oppressive because you're used to higher dimensional society, right? You're used to more telepathy. You're used to more energetic awareness. So star seeds tend to be highly empathic, very sensitive to energies, easily overloaded with energies as well. That can be one of them, one of the signs. Um, and just this strong current of like questioning, why are things the way they are on Earth? Because they don't have to be that way. They could be better. That's often a really strong indicator of a star seed. Another thing with star seeds is they tend to be very drawn to animals and the energetics in the natural world around us. So, like drawn to the energies of trees or even the elements, um, and also very connected to the stars as well. Like always been a stargazer, always been curious about space, always had a draw to look up. Right? These are all kind of pieces of connecting into a star being and a star seed ancestry. You may have dreams that are vivid of being on different planets, different places in the galaxy. Akashic records can often give you insights about starseed nature, as well as, again, spiritual hypnosis and having a conversation with your higher self. It's pretty significant. Okay, great question. Next question is, how might our minds and bodies feel when going through a spiritual transformation? All of a sudden, the other night, I woke up and felt like my whole body started to vibrate. Then my heart started to race. That never happens. I've been feeling awful lately too. Neck pain, headache, so tired, but I was feeling great before. So, anytime that we go through a spiritual upgrade, and we're getting more and more of these lately, especially with the solar flares, our awakening consciousness, it's coming from like every angle. So that waking up with, feeling the buzz of energy in your body, um, feeling like your heart is racing and it doesn't normally race, those are all indicators. The energetics around you are being registered by your body. Because, for example, if spirit came very close to you, say a starseed being, right? Let's say a Pleiadian being, energetically came forward beside you. You couldn't see them, but they were there with you. Your body would pick up on that. Your heart would start racing. You would feel that, like, the hair standing on end on your whole body. You would maybe even feel a vibration. You would feel this like whoosh feeling in your head or really dizzy. All of those are your body registering higher frequency. And so with all the solar flares that we've been having and geomagnetic storms, even the astrology and the thinning of the veil, like as our collective consciousness is rising, we are all starting to perceive more and the veil is seeming thinner. So we're picking up on all kinds of energy and undergoing great transformations energetically. So yes, all of that is happening. And the biggest thing to do is when you have those jumps in a feeling of like an upgrade, an energetic upgrade, is to take a couple days after to ground your energy, to really nourish your body, drink water, but connect into nature and slow down life. Because what we tend to do is we feel that energy and then we get extra busy and then we get into overwhelm and then we get stressed. We need to give the body time to acclimate to the change. And it usually takes a couple days. So it's like nurturing self-care in whichever way that looks for you. And it can be many different things, but not pushing yourself through that adjustment phase because energetic upgrades are a big deal. And it's changing the genetic paths our DNA is replicating. It's deep cellular work happening right now. And it still gets me too. I have days where I'm like, whoa, huge upgrade. I can't function, but I've learned to not fear it and rather embrace it and then do all the self-care things needed, right? And for me, that's an Epsom salt bath. That's taking time to slow down, not busy my day, to nourish myself really well, to go for a walk, not listen to podcasts and videos and think about work and all that. I allow myself the space, and that is so incredibly important, allowing yourself the space. Okay, and then the last question I wanted to add on this, because we did talk a little bit about ETs and soul origin, I thought this question was fun. It says, what do extraterrestrial races eat? And this makes me laugh, but it's also a really good question. It really depends. So from what I've learned, and I'm not an expert on what they eat, but I have had a couple conversations with them. There are some races that do eat fruits. They have certain unique fruits on their planet. A lot of races tend to be vegan, so they won't ingest any kind of animal product. Some don't need to really eat. They actually just imbibe the energies around them. Some rely on solar frequencies as their fuel source. Um, and some ingest almost like it's kind of like a gel or a goo-like substance that has all the nutrients that their bodies need. But some don't even eat regularly. Like some only need to eat a couple times a week. It really varies on the type of race and where they're from. So, I mean, that's a great question. I love that you asked. And I think there's so much more we're going to learn and explore about our galactic brothers and sisters in time. So I'd be curious to see what else comes out about that as we carry on. So that's what I have for all of you. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me on the podcast. Next week, I will be doing the December energy update. So do tune in for that. And if you're enjoying this content, please do share it and subscribe or rate the podcast. All of that stuff helps. And I just want to thank you all so much, for listening to what Spirit has to say and sharing your wonderful comments and just creating this beautiful community. It goes a long way. So just know that you really matter. So I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your week, and I will see you next week.